Before jumping into the demonstration, I quickly want to focus on a couple of the key themes that we've discussed. So, first of all, from our discussion so far, we understand Oxfam as a very global or international network of volunteers and employees. That comes with a huge diversity in the regions that you're working in and the campaigns and projects that you're working on. And for your leaders to be truly effective, they really need to understand that diversity in context. So being able to drill down or compare across different groups, really understand within context where they can have the biggest impact for that employee segment. So we will focus on that. But the second thing is that I understand that you have a lot of frontline employees working potentially with areas of large burnout or stress, or maybe they're encountering traumatic issues on a daily basis. It's really important for your frontline managers to be able to identify key employee issues and to be able to take action without delay to prevent any escalation. So with that in mind, I first want to focus on how we can empower your managers to take action. Now, one of the key things is that we always present information that makes sense and is just within the context of their own team and where they can truly take action and drive impact. So one of the key things is not to overwhelm with information, but actually to tell a story with the feedback. And in this case, we recommend bringing in maybe an explanatory guide, something like this, where we can have information for managers in terms of where they can take action, what's expected of them, how to digest that information. Now, one thing to note is that we do recommend that this is in line with the look and feel of your organization and with the language and messaging that you use. For good trust or for buy-in from managers, it's really important that they feel that this is coming from Oxfam itself, and that with that in mind, that the actions they're taking are really truly going to drive impact for their teams. Okay, so this is where we feel Qualtrics can be a really good fit for Oxfam, because this is something that we can really work with you on. So really personalize and customize this and make this feel as part of your organization. So in terms of empowering managers, it's really important that, first of all, data is accessible and really easy to understand, and you're not overwhelming with too much information. The first thing that your managers need to understand is what's going on at a high level without going into too much detail or showing too many comparators. In this case, they can see overall highlights in terms of engagement and intent to stay, how this trends over time, and even how they compare to the overall organization. So now that managers understand what is going on at a broad level, they also need to really understand highlights in terms of where they should focus or prioritize in taking action. Now, what Qualtrics is doing is really, in a very accessible way, presenting where managers can focus in terms of their key strengths and where they have opportunities for improvement as well. So where they can drive action based on where you're going to have the biggest impact for the overall engagement scores and where there's comparisons with the company overall. Okay, now, it is true that other organizations that you may work with may present things like key driver analysis. One of the key things here to keep in mind is often this can bring in very static measures or bring in items where managers really can't take action or have impact. So an example is items such as pay or benefits. It's not something a frontline manager can really impact in any way. And that can really undermine the buy-in or trust from managers and even from the teams that they're working with, because managers really can't have as much of an effect on these areas. The things that we do really want to highlight are where managers can have the largest impact, and that's within the context of their own team. So bringing in information here, for example, we see that we can see that one of the biggest opportunities for this manager is that they need to work on effective collaboration between teams. Now, Qualtrics is pulling up the insights that are most impactful. As you go further along, you can see that other insights further along, while they're still important, are not going to have as large an impact on overall engagement. But directly within this focus area here, our manager can be directed to some action planning content. Now, in this case, Qualtrics is pulling in some steps or a recommended guide in terms of being able to take action, so a guided action plan. And as you go further into the action planning themselves, and where managers can maybe change the ownership or the due date, maybe collaborate action plans across other managers and so forth. It's also important to note that Qualtrics is pulling in some guides or recommendations in terms of where managers can access resources, where they which kind of steps they should take based on best practice. Now, this is built by Qualtrics XM experts in this case, but again, we can very much work with your organization to pull in the resources and the information that makes most sense, and again, ensuring that we're getting good buy-in and using the processes and workflows that make sense for your teams. So linking with your own learning management system, with your own resource guides and so forth. Okay, so what we've seen already is, first of all, our manager has a fairly good understanding of what is going on at a very high level, and also where they should focus their attention in taking action as a priority. But managers realistically will want to understand where these scores are coming from and really understand each of these key themes in employee engagement in a little more context. Okay, but what's really important here again is not to overwhelm with information, but give just enough information for them to be able to take action and to understand what's important for their teams, even on areas where maybe they can't take action. But in this case, what we can see, for example, is the proportion of the team that are favourable or neutral or unfavourable to various different items to do with enablement and training. You can really easily understand where there are the biggest gaps versus benchmarks, such as a previous Pulse survey, the company overall, the region in which they're sitting. Now, one thing that's really important here, again, to help build trust in the data, is that Qualtrics is actually doing intelligent analytics on the back end. So in this case, it's actually showing that this item here is comparing to the previous Pulse is actually statistically significant. So if you think about if you're doing multiple Pulse surveys a year, it is likely that scores are going to go up through random fluctuation by 1 or 2 points. For managers to actually understand, okay, well, is this something that's more maybe important or systematic, or is it something that's maybe just random or a very minor variation? They can now take a lot more trust because Qualtrics is telling them that this is actually something that's systematic, it's statistically significant. And from this, we understand that where we have the biggest gaps and the biggest strengths and where we can improve. And even directly from this page, we can see that managers can go in and improve these more itemized sections as well. Okay, so the final thing to focus on is in terms of your values, and what's really important for your frontline teams, particularly as a charity, is that they're aligned with your values and what you stand for as an organization. Now, this is going to vary for every organization that we work with, and what's really important to highlight here is, again, Qualtrics is it's not tied to very specific measures or specific questions. We can work with your organization. So where we're looking at your values, we can align the items or the key questions that are going to make most sense within that context. Okay. So in this case, we're looking at items such as inclusivity, accountability, and courage, all of which we understand are really important for Oxfam. Okay. So just to sum up so far, what we've hoped to really highlight is that you can really empower managers to have a big impact at a localized level. But for this to happen, you need, first of all, information to be very accessible and understandable, but most importantly, to be very actionable and really to remove those barriers to action. And a key part of that is also increasing kind of buy-in, making this feel like an integral part to Oxfam as an organisation. And this is where Qualtrics is a really good fit, because we really work with you within the context of your own organisation. HR business partner perspective. Note that the view here is quite different to what we saw with the frontline manager. Qualtrics, what we do throughout implementation is work with you to provide the most relevant insights through each level of management, depending on what's going to be important and where they can drive the most strategic action. Note that the HR business partner, what they need to do is be able to align employees with strategic business objectives. Now for this, they need to truly understand the context for each employee segment and really easily understand where they need to align the most resources. So in this case, we can make very easy comparison between all regions. So for example, we can see that employees based in Germany score much lower on parameters to do with intent to stay and employee engagement. So they're lagging much far behind other areas across Europe. And clearly as a HR business partner, this is a segment I'll really want to focus my efforts on. Now for this, I really want to understand what's driving this low engagement from our German-based employees or Germany-based employees. Now what Qualtrics is doing is it's pulling in operational data to make easier comparison and really to fully understand the context for these employees. Now in this case, through our heat map, we can understand across multiple different parameters how our German-based employees are scoring. So we can see, we can compare against gender, department, role, and so forth. In this case, in light of everything that's happening within the last 12 to 18 months, we want to understand how work location is impacting overall engagement. And again, our region of concern is Germany. And what we can see here through making through very clear comparisons is that our home-based employees are scoring much lower on intent to stay. In fact, they're actually scoring significantly lower than employees based in other work locations. So already we know that for our home-based employees, we're possibly facing unique issues here that we need to address. Now, as a HR business partner, I'm now forming the question about, well, what's actually driving poor engagement with these particular group of employees. So again, I need to make further comparison. But what I really want to do is understand the key drivers, and Qualtrics is running intelligent analytics here in the background to not just understand what our employees in Germany are scoring highly or scoring poorly in terms of engagement, but actually what's going to be most important or most highly correlated with overall engagement. Now again, if we were to drill down to our employees based in Germany, but more specifically to those that are home-based, we can see that those things that are most important in terms of driving employee engagement are, for example, our employees in Germany that are home-based are feeling that they're not able to voice ideas and opinions, that they don't have the resources that they need in order to be effective in their role and so forth. So already as HRBP, I understand that I need to work with our German-based managers to really understand where we can provide the right resources, to perhaps drill down further on how we can facilitate better communication and so forth with our home-based employees. The second thing in terms of driving or understanding what's driving engagement is truly to understand open text feedback. And this is for a few reasons. Oftentimes we find really important insights hidden, but also it really helps to humanize or give full context as to what our employees mean when they provide feedback. Now, it's often an underutilized area of insight because it can be really difficult to understand or to analyze open text feedback. And Qualtrics is taking a lot of the work out of this for you, so it's running automated or intelligent analytics through our Text IQ in the background. So what it's doing is it's using machine learning to pull together topic analysis and then sentiment analysis. So it makes it very easy to understand things such as, what are your top positive topics, top negative topics across our employee base. Okay, so the second thing just to note is that other solutions, oftentimes they can provide some level of analytics, but the difficulty here is it's often analysed quite separately to quantitative feedback or to quantitative scores. And this can be very difficult. So, for example, it could be really difficult to understand, well, are certain topics related to overall engagement scores? How do they relate across different other different operators, such as operational data here? Now in this case, what we can see is that our employees that are particularly bringing up Oxfam's partners as a topic, that they have much lower engagement scores than those across other topics. So even if we're to drill down here, what we can see is that actually those that are mentioning partnerships in particular, that also this is coexisting a lot with topics to do with management, for example. And actually, if we were just to drill down in the open text comments related to these two areas, we can actually see that, in fact, a lot of our employees feel that management are not maybe trained to help them work with local partners and so forth. So this is clearly an area where we'll need to invest more efforts. But without actually analysing this open text feedback and without analysing it within context, some of these insights would have very easily been missed. Okay, so to summarise, we do believe that Qualtrics is a very strong fit for Oxfam as a partner, and for a few reasons, but in particular because of the curated role-based dashboards, which make it really easy to understand insights and context, and also the intelligent insights and action planning running on the background. Qualtrics can truly empower your managers at all levels to take meaningful action in a really timely way.